Hi, Amanda.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, what about yourself?
Designer here to help keep slow fashion in the limelight.
Interesting, great. What about you, Ruby?
Hi, I'm Ruby. I'm the founder of the Botanist. It's a house cleaning, eco-friendly cleaning product. So not everything is natural, no chemicals and everything, because I noticed a big lack of that kind of product in the UAE market. Those products are very popular in Europe around the Mediterranean Sea, but here, there was nothing similar. So I decided to start the brand here.
That's really interesting. Thanks. And I think what I really like about this panel is just the diversity that you all bring. Someone working in sustainable fashion, marine conservation, the other heading an organization to build awareness, and Ruby, you running an entire organization for cleaning products. So that's great. I think the entire topic today is conscious consumerism. So what, according to you all, is conscious consumerism?
So, in my opinion, conscious consumerism is just about being more present and mindful in our purchasing decisions that we make as consumers. And it's about ensuring that our choices do not have negative impacts on society, on the economy, and the environment, especially. I've heard some people describe conscious consumerism as a movement where we as consumers vote with every penny or dollar that we spend. And I think that's a really great way of thinking of it, because as we spend money on companies which engage in unethical practices, we're indirectly voting for those unethical practices. So I think thinking of it in that way can really help us be more conscious consumers and make more responsible choices.
I have to say as well, there's definitely the word conscious that we need to play on. We've seen the damage, and now we have to try and make sure that we're not adding to that problem even further. So, and all of that comes with obviously making sure it's headline news as much as possible, so that we're not adding to that pile that already exists.
Anything you'd like to add, Ruby?
Yes, actually, for me, as it is cleaning product or mass consumption product, I think there's something important about going into something either or zero waste or something that we can reuse. So I think it's two topics that we need to be very careful when we talk about that.
So conscious consumerism, I mean, given now it's really urgent for us to be mindful consumers, why do you think it's urgent now? Given talking about mass production, there's a reason why mass production makes sense, because the price points become lower and hence it becomes more affordable for people to consume certain products. So how do you balance the price angle of conscious consumerism as well as the urgency for it?
I think the easiest way to manage that balance is, first of all, to look at what you actually need versus what we're buying out of habit or buying out of ease, rather than going that step further and saying, well, actually, I can reuse.
Sorry, Amanda, you're not very audible. Can the other panelists please mute themselves when the other is speaking, because it's not audible?
I think it's just to make sure that we are looking at, first of all, buying items that are going to last and are not easy to throw away and fast to go through them. For example, if we have washing powders, I mean, you're all in the cleaning products. So washing powders, for example, if there's any way to get refillable ones, so you buy just the one plastic bottle and you refill it at the source. That's a key way moving forward, that we keep that balance, is that we actually don't buy things just because it's on the end of an aisle and it's on sale as well.
No, I think that's a really interesting point, especially in a community like UAE where it's so consumerism driven. I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah. I think something is very tricky as well about the mass production is the more we go into the mass production, the more it's huge factory that reduce salary, which lower the buying power of those employees. When we talk about small production, most of the times people get a fair salary and allow them to buy fair product as well. So it's all of a circle.
Right.
And I think we as consumers actually have the power to change this mass production, because as we demand those products, they're going to produce them more. So what we can do is demand more sustainable products, and eventually we will end up, moving towards the sustainable line. And a great example would be solar panels. At one point, solar panels were so expensive to make and to have, but now it's, almost affordable and easily available to a lot of people. So yeah, I
So
agree.
that you bring up a really interesting point, and I think I wanted to move to, since you all are such advocates for conscious consumerism, what are each of you doing to be conscious consumers?
So thanks to my environmental blog that I have, I'm constantly motivated to look for new ways to be more conscious about my consumption and just share it with others as well. But I think the first and most important thing to do to be more conscious is taking the time to learn about the companies you buy from and about the life cycle of the product. So just asking what materials the products are made from, how much water or dirty energy went into making these products, how much we're going to be using them, and how much carbon went into the production of these products as well. And another thing I've been focusing on as well is reducing both my organic and inorganic waste. So in the world, we generate at least 3.5 million tons of plastic as well as other solid waste. And this is 10 times the amount that we produced a century ago. So what I've been doing is just trying to reduce this waste by substituting some of the products that were unsustainable before to more sustainable ones. So like examples would just be like changing your toothbrush from a plastic one to a bamboo one, and or composting the waste that you produce. So those are just some of the...
And I think you're absolutely right. These are such easy shifts that we as consumers should be so much more aware of, but I guess it's catching on now. What about the rest of you?
It's true. I went plastic free about 2.5 years ago now. So I invested in a Kangen machine. Kangen's great because it just attaches to the sink, and every time I move house, I can take it with me. But for the cost of 8,500 dirhams, it's actually half the amount that I would have spent on the same amount of water I would have needed in that year as well. So it's become a cost-effective switch more than anything. But every piece of plastic ever produced still exists in the world today in some form or another. So whether it's microplastics or it's being recycled into other products, I've made sure that when I work with brands and I help them to become more sustainable, I go and do the due diligence. So I went round the recycling centres in the UAE and actually asked them, here's a PET1 plastic bottle, show me how you process it. And the answer I got was unfortunately not the one I wanted. So whilst I advocate for people to recycle, I also understand that the end result isn't there yet and it needs to be there. And I think we need to try and challenge whatever city or town or country we're in to make more of a focus on, using recycling as a key awareness tool for
Right.
plastic that already exist. For example, but there's plenty more ways in which you can be motivated here. I live on the ocean, so I do a beach cleanup, unfortunately, every single day. And with platforms like Azraq, we're able to sort of challenge consumers and challenge everyone on social media to try and get involved in their own beach cleanups or their own park cleanups or their own desert cleanups, depending on where they live. But you realize once you do it, every day for a week minimum, there is no going away for this problem. So we have to be much more conscious in our own daily lives to try and help make any kind of effect or change.
Well, I mean, going plastic free for 2.5 years is really commendable. So firstly, kudos for that. But it's also hard, Amanda. So like, how is...
It's 100% not perfect. This is the one thing I want everyone to understand. It is not perfect. Being a conscious consumer doesn't mean you do it perfectly. It means you try and you do one small change every day, or you change one person's mind every day. But in order to do it yourself, it is impossible, because it's not just me and my household buying things. So I can shout everyone else bringing in a plastic water bottle when I've got 100 tankards and gourds sitting in the cupboard. But at the end of the day, if you need water and you're out, there is no other solution at the moment. So it can be a win 10 steps, lose 12. Win 10 steps, lose 12. It's a constant battle. And like I said, when there are options out there that we can be 100% plastic free, I will then say I'm 100% plastic free. But for now, saying that I'm plastic free forces other people to change their consumer habits when I talk to them about it.
Perfect. And I think I really like what you said. So we at ShiftEco have this belief where we say small shifts, big impact. So exactly, you don't have to be sustainable perfectly, because that can also be very, very daunting and probably not attainable. So doing it in bite-sized chunks, that makes it easy for us as consumers. So totally resonate with that. Great. What about you?
Yes. Something that for me I try at home, it's to go as much as possible chemicals free. So we need to be conscious that all the chemicals that we use always goes into the water that ends up like all around the world, which is a huge, huge problem.
Yeah.
So I change all my way of cleaning. I change most of my way to eat as well, because even in the food, you can find like an awful lot of chemicals, or in the meat, you can find like all the antibiotics and everything. So being careful about what goes inside your food, what goes inside your cleaning product, what goes inside your house actually can make a huge difference on the long go. So that was my big change for me.
Perfect. So that's really inspirational for all of us aspiring conscious consumers. Since the three of you come from such different backgrounds, we want to spend a little time deep diving into certain topics with you. So we'll start with you, Nigar. We're amidst a really large climate crisis, right? And since you also studied this topic in great detail, can you tell us a little bit about the key issues we are facing today and how we as consumers can contribute positively to these issues?
So I think climate change in general is such a very complex and challenging crisis. And I think one of the reasons for this is because climate change doesn't affect everyone in the same way or at the same time or in the same magnitude even. So it makes it very challenging for everyone to contribute to its mitigation. Like there are some countries that could quite literally disappear, while others may not even feel the impact. So I think we need to take action all together, because while we may not all feel the impacts the same, we all do have the power to stop or at least slow down this crisis. And I think conscious consumerism is one of the tools to do this. The best way to answer this, I think, to give the example of waste that we produce as consumers. So we dump about 2 billion tons of waste every year into landfill. And this is because 99% of the stuff we buy is trashed within 6 months of using it. We end up buying unsustainable products that we don't need, or that we end up using just a few times and throwing away. So when this waste goes into landfill, it ends up producing greenhouse gases such as ethylene or methane, which is one of the most potent ones. And that creates air pollution and also contributes to climate change. It can also, leach out of the landfills into our oceans, which can damage marine life through, entanglement or ingestion, but it can also leach back into our own bodies. So essentially, we as consumers have the power to impact not just climate change, but also, our own health and our own well-being. So if we could just change some of our consumption habits, so if we can adopt this reduce, reuse, recycle mindset while also shopping more mindfully, we can really minimize these negative impacts that we have on climate change.
Right. No, that's really interesting. And I think you do a lot of work around awareness about these issues, right? So if you can tell us a little bit about your work with EcoCode.
So with EcoCode, in regards to climate change, we just recently actually had a workshop where we busted some of the climate change myths, such as, climate change is going to destroy the planet, but we're going to survive. There are so many weird myths that we hear on a day-to-day basis. So we just had a workshop where we busted those myths. And Well, EcoCode is mainly about teaching people, the problems that we're facing with the environment and what we can do as consumers to change those things.
Right, right. So I think it's a very interesting point you bring up, because climate change doesn't seem personal till it's actually personal, but now it starts impacting our health. And that's why it's actually personal for us to sort of make changes so that we're healthy and the longevity and all of that, right? So how do you think, so for us, we have a carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
Through the way we consume. How do you think we can calculate that in a more practical manner as a consumer? So tomorrow, if all our attendees wanted to calculate their carbon footprint, how could we do that?
So obviously there are equations that go into this, which are quite complex to say,
Let's
like
do an example. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
I can't. So it would just be like a simple multiplication. So, the different aspects of our lives, you would calculate different emissions from those. So you can calculate the use of your electricity and multiply that. Um, it's very technical, but basically you find out your emissions for each of the aspects of your life, and then you can add those up and create a carbon footprint. But I think what's easier to do is just, online, for example, the WWF has a carbon footprint calculator where you can just put in the different aspects of your life and it will calculate it for you. Yeah.
No, we understand that. So I think what would be the biggest contributor to a person's carbon footprint generally?
I think transport would probably be one of the biggest ones, but also your shopping habits, like even fast fashion can really contribute. So it really depends on, you as a person and your lifestyle and what you do that's most harmful to our planet. So it really varies from person to person, I think.
So I think I like the methodology you said about reduce, reuse, recycle. It's what people are trying to adopt now and people are trying to do. So in the whole reuse space, are there any switches or any things that you could recommend that people do?
So I think there are the simple ones that we all know, reusing our plastic, not using disposable plastic bags, reusing those reusable cups or water bottles. Even like cotton pads, they're really harmful for the environment. So we can make reusable makeup pad remover pads. I know as a girl, we use so many of them, and I notice in my trash bin sometimes that there's so many, and to think that these end up in our oceans or on landfills, it's shocking sometimes. So just simple changes, I think, simple sustainable changes. Yeah.
And I think coming back from reusable, we know how single-use plastic is really bad for the environment, right? It's the whole concept of like, you just use it once, you throw it, and it just ends up in a landfill and goes back to the entire waste conversation. So how big a contributor is single-use plastic? Because a lot of us don't realize the impact of just a water bottle being thrown around is, right? So how major is the issue?
I mean, if you think of it as, when we throw something away, we say, oh, it's just one plastic, but then think of you doing that every day, let's say, and then, billions of people doing the same. So it really does like add up. And as we end up, as we use those, we have to produce it as well. So every year we actually produce about 100 million tons of plastic. And the production process itself, releases so many greenhouse gases, but it doesn't just stop there. It's also after you use it, the waste that you produce, that produces greenhouse gases too. So it's a really long, harmful process from beginning to end.
Yeah. Any tips or tricks that you'd want to tell the audience about being conscious consumers?
I think just doing your research, that's the main tip, trying to figure out what, everything that you do has an impact, and trying to figure that out so that you don't contribute more to these negative things that we see today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks. Over to you, Amanda. So you're doing very different work from what Nigar is doing.
Don't ask questions.
Sorry?
was going to say, please don't ask me the same questions about carbon footprint, because I'm sat there going, oh my God, I need to.
No, don't worry. I'll try not to put you on the spot. So I want to hear a little bit more about your work with Azraq and what all you do with Azraq.
So I'm on the board of directors, which essentially means I get to have a hand and a say in the direction that we take for each of the campaigns. And we have quite a big one coming up, which is in my wheelhouse. We are looking at creating a sustainable fashion directory. So we want to be seen as not just an authority, but people who can actively help brands become more sustainable. And especially with COVID and lockdown, there seems to be so many more small fashion brands and slow fashion brands that are popping up nowadays, which is great. But I think the concept of sustainable fashion has been around a little bit longer, but without as much awareness. So we want to make sure that brands who perhaps are using recycled plastic bottles in their fibers and materials also understand that there's an end problem here with microplastics every time they put them in the washing machine being released from the leggings or swimwear and actually going directly into the ocean. So brands don't necessarily realize that, and especially if you're trying to do something good in this environment, and you're trying to, you know, give back to a charity, or you're trying to make things with what you believe is material that's supposed to be, you know, environmentally friendly, and then you find out something like this, it can be a bit of a hit. And we want to make sure that people keep with that drive and keep with that passion and still want to do good. So we are not saying don't use materials in this effect. We're just trying to help them find a result for the end product too. So we have things called corables. You also can find Guppy Friend bags and things as well that we sell on Azraq, which obviously the proceeds go back towards organising a beach cleanup or education days at schools and things like this. But those, once you throw them in your washing machine, will help collect all the microfibers. So there are actual things that you can do to help make your brand more sustainable, even if you do choose to use, it's called like Eco-Nile, which is plastic that's been taken out from the ocean or for landfill, and it's been rethread into a new fiber itself, which is great in theory, as long as people understand it also has an effect too. So that's the next campaign we're looking at, is creating this directory. But other than that, I've been with Azraq pre Azraq as a name. I have always been very, very passionate for the ocean. I wake surf, I surf, and I live on the water, and always have done as well. So it's very hard not to be passionate about what's in it, because anyone who says there's no nature in Dubai hasn't lived here quite as long as I have. Convinced there's crocodiles out there. There's so much going on in our ocean at night. It's great. But if you've swum and seen any of this plastic at any point, which I'm sure everybody here has, it's hard not to see just how much effect we're having on it.
Right. No, that's really interesting. And it's funny you say that Dubai has a lot of nature. Well, I stay in downtown. I don't echo the same sentiment. But yes, I think we want to hear a little bit more about the fashion industry. And I know you worked a lot in sustainable fashion. So what's the impact of the fashion industry on the environment?
Okay, well, that's huge. It's the second biggest industry in the world that causes environmental effect, problematic effect. So people have likened it to the aviation industry. And in fact, I think from a carbon footprint standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's up there, if not equal to, especially with no one flying for the last year. I think it's definitely overtaken. Sustainable fashion is a great term to throw around for the future of fashion, but I think we need to break it down. And there are different ways in which fashion can be considered sustainable. So one of them, as I mentioned, is obviously changing the material that you're actually using. And natural fibers are fantastic. So linens and silks and cottons and things. And trust me, we could go off on a whole other tangent about silks and ethical production and conversations around organic cottons. and how cotton production is actually a really big problem, because a lot of the dyes and things that they use in the material themselves will end up in the ocean, and it's chemical dyes. So I think there's key things to look at if you're a manufacturer, which is closed loop production. So it's making sure that the water used to wash the textiles and the fabrics with comes back in and is reused on a constant cycle, as opposed to being exported out of the facilities with all the chemicals and dyes and acids and things that they use in it. Or there's sourcing, you know, completely organic linens, which are at a higher price point, but you'll be able to keep it in your wardrobe longer. So if you look at something called cost per wear, if you actually go through your wardrobe and say, how many times have I worn this? Is this a piece of clothing that will continue to be worn? And therefore, even though I spent a lot on it at the beginning, the cost per wear makes it a very, very good purchase. And moving forwards in sustainable fashion, that's definitely the way we should be looking at creating more conscious wardrobes, for example. But there are, you know, problems with obviously fast fashion and using materials that are not sustainable. And I think a lot of these big brands are jumping to the conclusion that we've got, or been shouting at them for a while, which is, you know, that we are demanding a little bit more responsibility from them. And it's nice to see a lot of these big name brands who are considering even recycling their own clothes, or they're promoting repair of clothing. One of the big cases was a brand called Patagonia. Patagonia is based in South America, and one of the things they stopped doing was shipping internationally, because they actually said there's too many of our products in the world, and we'd rather you send us the pieces you already own from Patagonia that are broken, and we'll repair them for free and send them back to you. Right. So it's a really nice way for a brand to become more sustainable based on, you know, their footprint. And I think, conversationally speaking, you know, there is no true right direction. We just have to all do something, as we were saying before. But if you are finished with clothes, where does it go? So rather than, you know, it ending up in landfill, let's make sure it gets to a new home if it's in good condition, or, you know, fair condition. There are places like Thrift for Good, which is in the Golden Mile, that you can drop clothes to, and the clothes will be washed, steamed, go on sale, and then the items at 10 or 30 dirhams go to their charity, which is Golf for Good. There are places like Retold. I see Sean's on one of the. Hi, Sean. And Retold's a great place. You can actually give your clothes to. You can actually sell it there as well. So there are pieces in our wardrobe that perhaps we're like, oh, I spent so much on that, I don't want to just give it away. Take it to Retold, because that will be a really great place to help give it a new home and give it a second life. I'm at Retold, I think, once a week. Things from there, because I look at it as renting a wardrobe rather than actually like owning all of it. There are new places popping up all the time. Off-rack is a great way for going through your wardrobe, for example. And these are all UAE-based brands that are helping to give you a more sustainable wardrobe. Off-rack, Danielle will go through your wardrobe and she'll actually, you know, help go say, okay, how often do you wear this? And it's sometimes the hardest thing to do is go through your own wardrobe and you know, find yourself accountable for the fact that you bought something on sale because it was 2 for 1, or because there was a discount code and it caught your eye, and actually say, you know what, this could do as a new home. Because I mean, personally, I have a 1 in, 1 out policy. So if I buy something new, I donate something else. Yeah, but going back to obviously the conversation about materials and things as well, look at the labels before you buy. You don't need to have pieces in your wardrobe that are only going to last 1 season, 2 washes. We all have that. We all know that, you know, there are pieces we bought, oh, I've seen someone in it and I really like it, and you get hold of it and you can just tell by just from even feeling it sometimes that this is not something that's going to last time I wear it. So I think that conversation about, do you need it or do you just want it, needs to be much more front of mind when we're out shopping nowadays.
So I think that's very interesting that you talk about that, but I'm going to go back to fast fashion because it's a very interesting topic for most buyers, right? Because people want to dress more fashionably, and fast fashion solves that, right? And it's affordable, it's cheap. How do we as consumers switch over to that? Because a lot of counter arguments is sustainable fashion is not always the latest what's happening. So how do you balance that?
I would say, in all honesty, if you are buying fast fashion, you're buying it because you've seen it on social media or you've seen it on a friend and they look good in it. First and foremost, you need to perhaps look at that item and say, okay, this will work this season because it's a jumper. Therefore, it's not going to be worn in the UAE for another 9 months. If that item, you can honestly say to yourself, look, I'm going to wear it a lot, it's made of good material, then fast fashion is not bad. And as I said, you can always take fast fashion items that you've bought and put them into thrift for good and put them into retold. But bear in mind something I said earlier, which is every piece of plastic ever made still exists. And that is very true for clothing too. So textiles and fabrics in landfill is a huge problem. And doesn't get as much attention as single-use bottles or single-use plastic, but it is single-use plastic. In the fibers, in the polyesters, in the rayons, these are plastic fibers, and they have just as much of space in the landfill as any other water bottle or plastic container. So fast fashion is a big problem if it ends up in landfill. If you can keep that item going, and 9 times out of 10, the reason you can't keep it going is because it's made of material that it won't last. But if you can keep an item going, then it doesn't matter if it's high fashion or fast fashion, the life cycle should be as long as it is intended to be worn for. So all holes and tears aside, if that item can be repaired, it's going to be more cost effective to repair it than to buy a new one, for example, or to repair it and then thrift it or secondhand it.
Right. So I really like the concept of thrift and sort of reusing and sort of stuff like retold, etc. However, fast fashion also has a huge implication on fair trade, because the reason it's so quick and it's so cheap is because someone else is paying the price for it. So how do we as consumers become aware of it? Because sometimes when you walk into a fast fashion store, that's not what you're thinking about. But
yeah, you're right. And unfortunately, there's a bigger conversation there. We don't ask the questions, for example, walking into a beauty store and saying, was this deodorant tested on animals before I got hold of it? Was this makeup brush made out of fair trade animal fibers or plastic fibers? We don't ask those bigger questions because I don't think, unfortunately, people really want to know. When they want to buy something, they just want to buy something. And as consumers, we need to change that. We need to change that concept. We need to make sure that brands are more are held accountable. Right. So very, very well-known beauty brands that are in all of our cupboards right now, I can guarantee there's at least something in there from the big brands. They are going to have tested on animals, or they're going to have had very low minimum wage working conditions for the people that created it. And it is the same with fashion. So it's not just fashion that has this horrible ethical problem with the manufacturing process. But when you buy from slow fashion or small fashion brands, you can always find the source. So you can always ask those questions. And that's why the small and slow fashion brands should be championed moving forwards, not just for natural fibers, but because there is this closed loop chain that you can say, okay, this is the person that made your clothes. This is the one single person that sat there and put it together. Or this is the person that created, the fabric, and this is the person that made it, and this is the person that, sent it to you. So the smaller the chain, or the smaller the brand, the smaller the chain, and the closest to the source for you to have questions answered. But unfortunately, I think with the big brands, in particular, fast fashion brands and fast consumer brands, you're never going to get to the bottom of that, unfortunately. Yet, let's hope it changes. But it's not just fashion in that ethical conversation.
Great. Thanks so much, Amanda. Loved your input on the sustainable fashion part. Um, Moving over to you, Ruby, who's championing the Botanist. For those of you who've not used the Botanist products, they're absolutely fantastic. Their smell is really fresh. They come in glass bottles. They're refillable, and I love the products, Ruby, personally. Can you tell us a little bit more about it yourself?
Yes, sure. Actually, as I said before, I started the Botanist because I didn't find anything similar in the UAE. I used to live in France for so many years, and over there, like it's just a normal way to clean your house. It's to use Castile soap or Marseille soap. So here I was a little bit like, when I arrived, I just asked my nanny, "What do you need?" And I didn't really question it because I was a newly mom, a bit overwhelmed with the new baby and everything, until I realized like, oh, can I leave her like that choice to decide like what she put inside my house? This is not right. So I try to find like better alternatives, but always got like those feedback like doesn't clean that well, complicated everything. So I just like decided to do my own cleaning soap, and I did like many research actually. And when you look at the normal commercial brand that we can use, there's so many chemicals inside that it's dangerous actually for our health, not only for us, but for the environment as well.
Right.
So there's actually like a large list like of problem that we can get from using them, going from asthma, cancer, fertility problem. There's allergen, irritant for the skin. So it is not normal that a daily use product for cleaning your house has like dangerous symbol at the back. So it should already like trigger something like that it's not right because it's dangerous for you. It's dangerous for the people who make those products. It's dangerous for the environment at the end. It's just like they start those projects actually after the Second World War when the women start going to work and didn't at the time like to do their own soap as they used to do. So they say like it will clean faster, it will kill the germ, it will make everything easier for you.
Right.
And it's cheaper because after the Second World War, the budget were very limited. But now, with time being, it's time to realize that it's not the good way to do the things. Like even like as Amanda said previously, like the cosmetic that we use for ourselves. There's a long list of chemicals now that they are used in the cosmetic, and this is not normal because it's going on our skin. It's very dangerous for us at the end, so we need to be conscious about that. Like if you look at the cleaning products, like I will just go to a small list of chemicals that needs to be avoided as much as possible. Like if we want to go to a quick statistic, just in the USA, there's almost like 80,000 different chemicals that are created on the market. On those 80,000 chemicals, between 2 to 3,000 are used like on a regular basis for the cleaning product.
Right.
Out of those 3,000, only 7% are tested to see if they are dangerous or if they can bring like some health issue at the end. The
Right.
only ones that are tested are the ones that some people start to raise concern after using them, having some trouble and everything. They raise a red flag and the product gets tested. But it's only like less than 7% of the chemicals that is tested at the end. So
That all the
yeah.
others are listed. That's interesting. I had no idea about it. So if
Yes.
mass consume or mass produce cleaning products, what are the key things we should look at which we know is really bad for us?
Yes. Actually, that is very tricky because, as I say, like only 7% are tested, but they are tested as a single product. The mix of chemical are not tested either. So which means another product that sometimes like when two chemicals goes together, they bond together and create a third chemical, which can be like even more dangerous. So it's a long chain of problem actually that we are facing.
Right.
So let's say like the main like chemicals that we need to look at are the phthalate. More and more they start to be removed from the list of products. Most of the countries say like we need to remove like phthalate, sulfite, and things like that. The only problem is chemical company can easily hide them into a subcategory called fragrances. Fragrances is like a bomb. They don't have the obligation to disclose what ingredient is put into the fragrances because a fake pine smell has a secret recipe and they don't want the competitor to copy their fake pine smell. So they can put like all the phthalate, the sulfate, everything inside this category because it's not tested.
Right.
So phthalate is a big problem.
Right.
After, now, especially with all the hand sanitizer that we need to use and the antibacterial soap and everything, there's another chemical called triclosan, which is like, which create like antibiotic resistance. And this is another big issue that we are facing because if we are becoming antibiotic resistant, some disease, we need antibiotics. So we need to be very careful at how we treat that category. Like, okay, I'm not a very big fan of all the medicine and everything. I try first natural product and then I go to the real medicine if needed. But the real medicine need to be kept only for specific reasons. So, and some people will really need it. So if we become like antibiotic resistant or things like that, it can become a big society problem. After, it's all the ammonium compound that are like, that create like same antibiotic resistance. So we need to be careful about that. After, there's one called 2-butoxyethanol. When you see, anyway, when you see names that you cannot like pronounce like fluently, flag, it's not normal. That can cause like, because of all the spray products that are very like hairy and that you can breathe easily, it causes like pulmonary, kidney problem, liver damage. So we need to be very careful. And all the ammonia and chlorine, which is the same, like when we clean, we breathe them easily, can cause like breathing issues, asthma, thyroid disruptor.
Basically,
so those,
sorry. So what you're saying is that cleaning products, clean cleaning products are actually good for our health in general because they don't have these harmful chemicals which we can't pronounce and we don't know anything of, and fragrances that are sort of hiding the real ingredients in the cleaning product. But from an environment perspective, so I think there are two parts of being a conscious consumer, right? One part is, of course, doing good environment, etc. The other is the health part. So for the environment, from an environment perspective, how are cleaning products? I know that word sounds kind of strange. How are they better for the environment?
at the end, if you go back like to Castile soap or Marseille soap, it's soap that exists for centuries.
Yes.
And for centuries, we didn't add like that kind of issues that we are facing now over the past like decennies. So if some things have been good for centuries and now in a few decennies, we are like, just put everything down, it can raise a flag that previous cleaning method was much better. And at the if you look at the ingredient in the cleaning product, they are very basic ingredients that you can find at the grocery store. So for me, like one of my main ingredients for my soap is olive oil. The olive oil, I buy them from a food olive oil supplier. So it's a virgin olive oil that I can use either for cooking or for doing my soap. So it's very natural at the end.
Right. And how do you see your products, sort of what all different products do you have currently? And how do you see your range evolving? Because the kind of products you're doing right now, I think what we really like is their glass bottles. It's completely plastic free. You offer a refillable option, which is quite rare in the Middle East. So how are your products? How are you going to build a bigger range of products?
Right now, we are working on a few new products.
Yeah.
Well, of course, like I think a hand sanitizer is always a good option because it's something that sadly is becoming like part of our daily life. So having like a hand sanitizer without chemicals inside and with very basic ingredients will be important.
Right.
Same as I said before, like I don't like fragrances because for me it's just like an amalgam of chemicals binding together. So we are using only essential oil. So we try to choose our essential oil based on either their cleaning property or their good property, like for the skin to help like the skin and everything, or even breathing issues. So most of our spray cleaning products use like orange essential oil, which is very good for sinus and breathing. So we try to be conscious at different level at the end. So yeah, so there's a few new projects like and soap and sanitizer that are coming. But also we are working on the refill range as well, because now it's only big bottles, and we understand that big bottles means a higher cost for the customer. So we are working on a formula that will be like ultra concentrated, but in a small refill pod,
Right.
still glass bottle, that people after can either like recycle or reuse for spices or something else. And with glass bottles, there's always things that we can do.
Right.
And we are working as well on refill station. So we did a test at the Right Market last weekend. It was a very big success. People like were very happy about the refill station. So we will continue over the few next weeks just to see like how it goes. And we are working to install like a few like permanent refill station in some stores, because we think that it's important. Like glass bottle, we can reuse it like very often. It's easy to recycle. Glass is easier to recycle than plastic at the end as well. So yes, we try to find a way for the customer to keep the bottle as much as possible.
I think my last question for you, Ruby, would be that when you look at mass-produced cleaning products, while they may have been layered with chemicals, there's always the price point that makes it attractive for consumers. Whereas when we look at clean products like yours, um, they come with a slightly higher price tag. How is how has your experience been in launching your products, and how do you find uh, showing your value proposition better so that people are buying your products over the mass-produced, chemical-laden products?
Yes, I know this is a big problem, because when you do like soap from the beginning till the end of the process and you use essential oil instead of almost like free cost fragrances, of course, you cannot sell your product at the same price. Even glass bottle is much more expensive than a plastic bottle. But at the end, I think my customers were very supportive, and they really understand that at the end, they are paying for a product. They are not paying for cheap chemicals and marketing and publicity. They are really paying for something like that, that is tangible, because at the end, our margin are not like very high. Even if the product is expensive, we try to keep the price as low as possible to try to make it more affordable, even if I know it's still expensive. But this is how we try our best at the end.
Thank you. And just on that note of price point, I want to pose a question towards you panelists. When you look at, all of us are trying to be conscious consumers, right? Small steps towards conscious consumerism. However, we very often find that brands pose themselves as, as green, as clean, and they're doing that as a marketing perspective to be able to charge higher price points. So how do we stay clear of greenwashing, as we call it, and sort of make sure we are supporting the right companies and the right brands?
So I think first you have to spot the greenwashing, and usually that comes, I usually look for three things. So if I see words with no clear meaning, like pure and natural, or even just the term eco-friendly, that's usually a sign that where you want to do a bit more research and find out, is it actually pure and natural? Is it eco-friendly? Another thing is, a lot of brands use the color green just to indicate that they're supposedly having a green impact, which isn't always the case. And then there are also green products that are made from dirty companies. So like efficient light bulbs that are made in a factory that pollutes rivers, so you have to look out for these. But once you do spot these greenwashing methods, do your research. When you see this awesome green claim, double check it, go on their website. And usually companies that are truly sustainable will be a lot more transparent about the kinds of materials they use, where they manufacture, what kinds of policies and programs they have to reduce pollution or, ensure fair wages even. And if you can't find the information you're looking for, you can also contact them. And when they truly are green, they'll be more likely to give you that information as well. And also there are independent apps that do this sustainability research for you. So I know one for like fashion brands called Good On You, which gives like an environmental and social score kind of for different brands. Also, another thing to check out for, I think, is labels. So like labels that are, from more official organizations, so certifications or something. And some examples are like EcoCert, which is usually for more cosmetic brands, or GOTS, which is the Global Organic Textile Standard. So that's more for clothing brands, where you can know that, the product you're getting is actually organic and it's not just claiming to be organic.
Anything else you all want to add, Amanda, Ruby?
No, I mean, the two ones that I know of, you definitely highlighted already. I think one of the things we have to be careful of is fast fashion brands using the word sustainable, but then only doing maybe a percentage of in the actual label. So I think one of the others as well is vegan leather. Obviously, if you're not paying a very high price and they say vegan leather, it's probably a plastic alternative leather as opposed to a mushroom or some other coconut fiber version of the leather itself. So if you are going to do vegan leather, make sure it's a quality price point. Otherwise, unfortunately, you won't be doing any good by buying it. And normally we choose the vegan word or the eco word when we're making that conscious decision to buy the piece. So it can be really misleading because whilst people have the good intention, they're being fooled.
Anything you need to add, Ruby? Sorry, you're muted, Ruby.
No, I think it has been like properly covered, and same like I would say like even for the cleaning product, like the brand that can sell their product about almost the same price as normal like chemical cleaning product usually will use like synthetic compound that maybe break down faster in the oceans, but at the end can be like dangerous as well.
Before we sign off, and since we have to, any last comments from the panelists about how to be conscious consumers, or any last motivational tips that you all have?
I think it's just important that we just all continue to do our best and do small change. I think it's something that we repeat again and again. It's not about being super good about that, like from today till tomorrow. It's just like doing small change that make us happy, and slowly we will be able to make another small change, like changing like the plastic jar in our kitchen for glass one, and then slowly changing something else. Like it's small step at the time, and we will arrive to something that make the difference.
I agree. Conscious consumerism isn't about being all in or all out. It's just about making small changes and those building up to make big impact. So you don't have to be perfect. just go in your own pace. And some of the swaps that you make, like the substitutes that you do at home or, in your life, they won't really affect your life that much, but they will have a bigger impact on the environment and society as a whole.
Yeah, I would just sign off by saying that, like we've all had that sentiment. It's small but often, and think before you buy. And do you really need it? Whatever the product, whatever the whether it's cleaning or cosmetic or it is fashion, and sign up with something if you are really, really interested in living more sustainably and being conscious as a consumer in any shape or form. Sign up with a local community and do some good, like a beach cleanup, or even if you're just on your next walk or cycle or whatever it is and you see some trash, it might not be your trash, but just help to pick it up, because at some point, unfortunately, it will end up somewhere in nature, and that's the opposite of what we want.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much for everyone who attended this session. We really enjoyed the dialogue. I think all three of you brought out really different elements of us being conscious consumers. And I personally really enjoyed the session. For the audience, if you all have any further questions, I know some of you all have already asked in the Q&A. Whoever has any additional questions, please feel free to write to us. Additionally, I want to add Shiftyco does webinars every month. Sign up with us and be aware of these sessions, and we'd love to have you all attend the next one in February. That's all. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day. You too.